And that comes back to environmental accounting. If you were all to take out your wallets right now, tip out the change that's in there, what do you think you would notice? You have a penny, maple leaves as bronzes in fall, a nickel with the resplendent beaver, and then a quarter with the caribou there as the cowboy fringant, ben plus beau sur un 30 sous. Loonies with their namesake, serenely swimming along. And finally, the majestic polar bear on your $2 coin. Do you notice a pattern? These are all representatives of biodiversity. So why are we not accounting for our biodiversity and our ecosystems in the same fashion that we monitor job market fluctuations, that we look at trade and imports and exports? And it's not an easy process. I worked with an eminent group of scientists in Australia, the Wentworth Group of Concerned Scientists, who come from a variety of environmental, economic, and business backgrounds. And they, in 2007, worked on a system of national environmental accounts for Australia. It's basically a regionally based system using what we call natural resource management areas. So those are based generally on a catchment. And using different indicators, both of land, so that's our soil resources, plants and animals, water volume and quality, towns and cities, including things like consumption and waste production, and then the marine and coastal and atmospheric, I guess, sectors of the environment. And using indicators for all of these areas to provide annual accounts that, although collected at a regional level, can be scaled up to a national account to give the general population some kind of figure for the state and also changes occurring in our natural capital. And then, so it's certainly not an easy system to implement, and obviously Canada as well, as was explained earlier, is starting to move in such a direction. But I believe that if we do all work together, we can achieve a better consciousness and a better knowledge of what benefits biodiversity can provide and what resources we have available to us. So if we work together, hikers and people just enjoying recreation outdoors, volunteers, scientists, natural resource managers, and also educators, to pool our information, pool our knowledge, and to try and create national accounts that we can use then to make better long-term planning decisions and to improve the cost effectiveness of our conservation and achieve the best outcomes that we possibly can. So, j'espère que notre voyage mondial ce matin vous avez donné un peu la même réalisation que moi, que nous nous sommes entourés par la biodiversité et que notre survie y est vraiment liée. Mais pour finir, je veux vous laisser avec une possible nouvelle définition pour les services écosystémiques. Disons, les services qu'on peut nous-mêmes rendre aux écosystèmes. Merci.
Morning. I didn't know really what I was going to talk about, but I put a couple of slides together to show you what I did. I worked for about 10 years at the Gund Institute for Ecological Economics doing landscape modeling. I think a lot about ecological economics. And worked with Robert Costanza for a while, and by January I quit the university job and started on my own. Now I have a really short commute. So it improved my ecological footprint. Plus I can come home for lunch. Anyway, so basically what I do is I'm a computer simulation modeler. My background is as an ecologist, and over the last 10 years I'm really been busy with this question. It's like, what do economists do? I think I might have figured it out, kind of, but most economists wouldn't agree with me. Anyway, I make landscapes. A lot of what I do, if you do simulation modeling, you play this game and you ask, like, what does that mean question. You know, with every word eventually needs to be translated in some kind of mathematical concept. Very scary, but you need to know very crisp what every word means. So you might see that in my presentation, that I do that kind of stuff. If I can get it. Okay, there you go. So in 2002 we published this diagram. I've seen many of these kind of diagrams ever since, and there have probably been some before. But this diagram basically describes some of the terminology behind ecosystem services, how that feeds back into decision making, and so on and so on. I can look at this one here. Where we start are the ecosystem services and processes. The services and processes have three different components. One is the energy that comes in there, that's what drives it. There is structure there, and there is information there. And when we talk about biodiversity, it's the information that makes the structure and the energy actually be productive in doing things for us, or for themselves and all that. So this is a part of the system where there is no value system. It's just what is in nature, just what is. As human beings, as a social system, we're looking at these processes and we interpret that. We say there's all these things that we can do. We can, you know, make eel skins out of them, or we can, you know, there's like a lot of things that we can do. And what we can do in these processes very much depends on how we know how to do things. So if you look at different kinds of cultures, there's different kinds of technologies, and they can use these resources in different ways, and therefore some cultures are willing to trade away these things while other cultures are willing to trade. And so there's like a conflict between cultural outlooks on what to trade away and what to keep around. So that is where a lot of the conflict about ecological economics is, ecological services. So then we made this what we call an ontology or classification with a whole list of ecosystem functions that are not yet valued. And then we look into the cultural context of the landscape of where we are, how people actually have a need or no need for all those different services. Well, looking at the need or no need for a service, that's where the price comes in. If you're scarce on a resource that you need, then you're willing to pay more money for it, and so that is called the marginal pricing. And so that basically is where pricing comes from. But pricing eventually comes from trade-offs. How are we willing to make the trade-offs? And so when you talk with a lot of people who all are part of a landscape and making decision-making, it's about making decisions about the trade-offs. And the trade-offs, it's like now we have our economic goods and services. The trade-offs are not only economic trade-offs, how do we get distribution of the resources as efficient as possible between all the players, but we also make trade-offs in biodiversity. Now, biodiversity here is used in a different context. It's used as a value. I like to have a lot of biodiversity or a little bit. It's just like I want to have a lot of money or not so much money. So there is like a very physical definition of biodiversity, the information in the system, but there's also a value statement that we have in biodiversity. That makes the term biodiversity for me very difficult, because it has these two different meanings. But anyway, there are different valuation systems, and one is about the sustainability of the system. Does it work? Can we last this for a time, and so on. And then there is a definite, the way we can look at these services, and are these things equally distributed? Is everybody actually have access to these things? So we can look at the social systems, and we can look at social equity. It doesn't matter how much they're worth, as long as they're socially. And then there's of course the economic evaluations, and for a lot of people, that is the argument that they want to hear. And I'm saying, okay, I'll get you the numbers, but is that really how we need to make the decisions? Anyway, all those different kind of value systems comes together in a total value, and how they are weighted is part of the political process. And then eventually from the political process, we start to do things in the ecology. We start changing things around, managing things. And then the next time, we have a different distribution of services that works in a slightly different way, and then that has to be checked against all these. So this is basically the flow of information that I'm trying to build in the models. And that model, the model that I've been working on is the multi-scale integrated model of ecosystem services. Multi-scale because I'm applying it for the globe, for watersheds, for countries, and so on, whatever the client wants. Oops. So basically what the MIMES does, it's a simulation model. It uses a lot of the biophysical knowledge that we have about water flows, how species interact with each other, how landscapes develop, and so on and so on. It simulates over time, so we can run scenarios in it. And it also simulates in space. So the outcome of it is something like this. It's a landscape. This happens to be part of North Carolina and part of Virginia. And this slide supposedly is to be running, so you can see it as a movie. And the output out of this model is many of these different kinds of movies. And it also gives you movies on the economic output, the biodiversity output, and then you can run a lot of scenarios through it. I like to run scenarios on simulation models rather than on the real system. and I like to learn that way, so that we get to better decision making. So basically, by doing, you're learning, right? We only have one Earth left. This is how each of those little polygons in that model is basically is represented as this. So the yellow box in this one is locations, and each of the locations has a biosphere. Where the biosphere is represented through what we call process-based models. It's like nutrient flow, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the nutrient flow, how they end up as in structures, biological structures. And then there is also a biodiversity content, and that is more like an agent-based approach, where we have all these different species with their individuals moving across the landscape. And the biodiversity influences how the processes go, and the processes set the habitat conditions for the biodiverse organisms, and so together they can grow they can you know, anyway, it's two different ways of looking at the world integrated with each other.